This was about 12 or 13 years ago. We heard a lot of people talking about group practices. They weren't called DSOs at the time, and it was interesting that it seemed like they thought that the dental industry was going to follow the medical industry in terms of consolidation. And I started to research it on the computer and really wasn't finding any information about it. But I thought if it's true, if this is working in the medical industry, if this is going to happen, if it's inevitable in the dental field, and maybe we should consider starting something digitally on our own. What posts you're commenting on, who you're affiliating with, who you're associating with. People need to know that they can come to us and the information is going to be accurate. We've always been very honest. We know the way to market to a DSO, and I think people value that because it is so difficult to get your product into a DSO, if you even want to get into a DSO. I mean, not everybody wants to do that because it can be very difficult.
Welcome back to The Doers, the podcast where we dive into the real stories of building, struggling, and thriving in dentistry. I'm your host, Dan Hall. In each episode, we explore the challenges, victories, and lessons learned from the leaders in the trenches shaping the future of dentistry. Today, I'm joined by Kim Larson and Bill Neumann of Group Dentistry Now, the two founders that had the foresight to see that segment in the industry was missing a reliable resource for good quality content to grow. Kim, Bill, thank you so much for joining me on this episode and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I want to hear your story. And in fact, I think that's the starting point. What was the moment where you're like, hey, there's this gap in the market of a reputable resource for DSOs to go to for good quality content?
So that's a great question. This was about 12 or 13 years ago. We were at the CDA show in Anaheim, and we were walking the show floor, and we heard a lot of people talking about group practices. They weren't called DSOs at the time, and it was interesting that it seemed like they thought that the dental industry was going to follow the medical industry in terms of consolidation. So we were talking about it, and I started to research it on the computer and really wasn't finding any information about it. But the information that I did find, which was limited, was very, very negative information. But I thought if it's true, if this is working in the medical industry, if this is going to happen, if it's inevitable in the dental field, then we would like to maybe talk about it with people, and maybe we should consider starting something digitally on our own. And so we did. And it took about a year or two to kind of get our ducks in a row and figure out how we were going to do this, because we were doing different jobs and we had to kind of figure out a pathway to make it happen. And through a partnership that we kind of started talking about it with people and building confidence. And then we started the website. And I remember at the beginning, since there was really no information, DSOs were very close to the chest, holding their cards close to the chest. They weren't talking about it because there was such an evolution. Back a decade ago, this industry looked completely different than it does now. And DSOs were suspicious of us. The ADSO was suspicious of us. Solo practitioners were suspicious of us. Everybody was. So it was a very difficult space to break into. Nobody wanted us, and everybody kind of needed us because we were there to disseminate information to the DSOs about other DSOs, as well as kind of connect them, be a bridge for DSOs and vendors. So that's kind of how we started. I'm sort of hogging it here, but that was how we started. And the first maybe year, I wrote, I have a hand in all of the articles on our website, but back in the beginning, I was writing every single article, and I was literally piecing the article together with crumbs. I would find a crumb here, a crumb here, a crumb here, and I would take it and somehow make it into a cohesive article. And back then I would wake up in the morning and I would say to Bill, what are we going to put out there today? And there was nothing. So it was a really slow, we had to really grow slowly there in the beginning, but then it took off. And now there's a totally different industry. DSOs, they had their issues back in the day. It seems like they've corrected a lot of their problems. Of course, there are always going to be problems, and there will always be problems. It's just typical of whether or not you're a solo or a group. But now DSOs are happy to share their story. They want to share their story. They try to put their best foot forward. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's hard to recruit and retain staff, dentists included. And you really want to make sure that the dentists are empowered. Back in the day, maybe it was a different story, and Bill can talk about that.
Yeah, Kim did a great job of kind of summing up. It was really her. She mentioned we were doing different things at the time. And I wasn't really paying much attention to, unfortunately, what some people were saying. Kim was, fortunately. And so she kind of kept going, well, what is this talk about? They didn't call them even, you think about it, Dan, 12 years ago, they weren't called DSOs. Like, that's a relatively new acronym. It used to be dental group practice.
Group practices,
that's what they were. Yeah. I mean, even the ADSO was originally called the Dental Group Practice Association, and they made that transformation sometime in 2014, 2015 to the ADSO. And that's kind of when that acronym was born, because at the time, dental group was like a bad word. And so then, of course, unfortunately, DSO turned into that bad word with some people, right? It kind of followed the new nomenclature. But one funny story, if you kind of go back to, that time frame, is Kim mentioned that solo practitioners were really suspicious of DSOs, and DSOs were suspicious of us because we all of a sudden kind of popped out of nowhere with this website, and they were wondering who the heck is behind this. Do they have good intentions? Do they have bad intentions? So I was at an ADA meeting in Denver, Colorado. I can't remember the year, but it was early on. And Gary Picard, who works for Pacific Dental, he's in their industry and government relations. And Steve Thorne kind of sent him on a mission to figure out who we were. And so I ended up meeting him there, and he hammered me with a bunch of questions until I think he felt comfortable. And now, of course, he's on our editorial board. So I guess we made them feel comfortable enough that, we weren't a threat to them, and we were actually there to tell the story that, hey, this is a modality that makes sense. This is an opportunity for docs to sell their practices and partner up and get some, in some cases, form a partnership and have some equity. And then also for younger clinicians to find a pathway to partnership or a great career opportunity. So it's amazing how things have changed.
And dental schools have certainly put out the red carpet for the DSO space. Probably that's not their intention, but is in essence what's happened, because the tuition is obviously outrageously expensive, and a new dentist can't necessarily hang their shingle, and they're not getting that wet finger experience that they need. So a DSO is a great place to hone your skills, to get a mentor. You don't have the money to open up your own practice. Maybe someday you will be able to have that money. You could work at a DSO for a year or two, maybe 5, whatever, 10. So it's a great pathway to owning your own.
Oh, yeah, you see a lot using it as like a stepping stone in their career, right? To get going and decide what path. Yeah. And some stay in that lane because it works really well for them,
right?
And where they are in life, and others use it as their path to a private practice. There's one thing that was interesting that you said there, Bill, in the story that you were talking about, where you had these trust components, and then you met with that individual that now sits on your board. I guess this is one thing that stuck with me as I was researching and preparing for this interview. Is anyone can start a newsletter or spin up a Facebook group. There's lots of them out there in the dental space, but you all built something that DSOs, and I guess I should maybe call them groups, right? If we look back to the early days, actually rely on. I mean, in my seat that I sit in on a daily basis, I hear your name referenced often. And they're usually referencing other solutions out there to see if they integrate within some of the items that sit inside of our portfolio over at CareStack and VoiceStack. And I find it fascinating because they're going there, they're consuming this, and then going and taking it on their journey as they vet new solutions. So how did you set it up to make sure Group Dentistry Now stood out as a trusted resource? And I guess I'm attaching to that for your comment there, Bill.
Our influence is that we have tried to protect our name at all costs. So what that means on a daily basis is what posts you're commenting on, who you're affiliating with, who you're associating with, who you're featuring. All of that, it's like keeping the brand reputation first has always been one of my goals. And I feel like sometimes if we veer off that path, we have to kind of pull the reins in and say our reputation, people need to know that they can come to us and the information is going to be accurate. And we've always been very honest. And if it's something sponsored, we're honest. We never try to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. And we know the way to market to a DSO. And I think people value that because it is so difficult to get your product into a DSO. If you even want to get into a DSO. I mean, not everybody wants to do that because it can be very difficult for a variety of reasons, which we're probably not going to touch on today. But yeah, I think that reputation for us is everything, making sure that everything and everyone and every word, everything is high quality. And also a huge key to our success is Bill's reputation. Bill's for many, many, many years was in the industry, building his name in the dental space. And so we had that, and, he continues to do that, and he's a consultant and he speaks at these events, and people look to him as, a speaker and authority and things like that. It's just years and years and years of relationship building and reputation.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you, Kim. I think the only thing I'd add to that, Dan, is that, from Kim's perspective, because like she mentioned, she's the one that handles the website and the content and the way it's delivered is there are a lot of publications out there in the dental space. And so what we wanted to do is make sure that the content resonated with the audience, which are large DSOs, doctors and staff that might be curious about joining a DSO, and a lot of those emerging groups, which we really get excited about creating content about and sharing with our audience. That's, it's still doctor owned and led. They might have 3, 4, 5, 10 locations as they start to scale up in those really interesting stories. But what we're doing is we don't spam. We do one newsletter a week. We make sure we have a balance of editorial and sponsored content to pay the light bills. And we are dental people. We're not, we're dental people first, publishers second. And we want to make sure like if we create good content, then the audience will come back and then sponsors will follow. So that's the idea behind it.
And you have an editorial board, right? Like that's amazing to ensure that I don't know the role they play. I'm just making maybe an assumption here of making sure you hit on that content. Because when I go and look at your board, it's got a good mix of, I think you put it really well there, Bill, like showing that you're dental first and then publisher second, making sure it's relative and quality content for those that are going to go out there and consume it.
Yeah. And we're not assuming that we know what the audience wants to learn about. So it's good to have an editorial board that can go, like I mentioned, Gary from PDS, he's always one to text me and are you talking about this or, what are you guys doing? Can we get a call together? So it's, they're good. They kind of push us to, make sure that we're staying relevant.
And the foundation of the company today is the same as the foundation of the company on the first day, which is we want to be the voice of the DSO space. We want to make sure that people see the benefits of it, both from the team's perspective, the clinician's perspective, as well as for patients and everybody and vendors and everybody in between. So really, our heart is we're focused completely on the success of the DSO space. And that remains our mission and will remain our mission probably forever.
Well, that's great. I mean, this kind of teased me up. I mean, you two have had a front row seat. So we're talking 12 years. They weren't even called DSOs back then, right? Groups. Yeah, and everyone a little unsure of everybody in this situation, right? The DSOs were quite sure about you guys, then individual practices, not sure about the DSOs. And I think a lot of that is kind of smoothed over time. And during that front row seat, I'm just curious if we were to pull out our crystal ball, I'd like to hear from you two. What's changed most in this wave of you as you've watched them evolve, and then kind of like what potentially is coming in the future, that crystal ball?
I mean, I think there's a lot that's changed. There was that rapid consolidation we saw. I would say it started maybe around, it was pre-COVID, so interest rates were super low. Maybe around 2018, 2019, you started to see a lot of private equity get into the space, and there was a lot of growth through acquisition and rapid growth. And then, of course, interest rates start to click up in 2022. And then everything kind of slows down, and a lot of these, groups that grew, expanded too quickly, maybe were really good at buying practices. Maybe they weren't good at them, right? Maybe they were overpaying for them, and even buying practices that, really, weren't necessarily, they weren't cohesive, right? They weren't the same culture. They were just buying them to get scale and hopefully, hot potato, right? Flip them to another PE and then let them, figure out, how to make them all integrated and work together. So I think we saw, this incredible growth through acquisition. Interest rates go up. You've got some challenged DSOs, acquisitions stop, and now all of a sudden there's this focus on cost control and then focused on same store sales growth, right? We hear organic growth quite a bit. So I think that was kind of like the biggest change that I've seen. And, you've got a lot of groups that have been able to do well, and then a lot of them that are really still seem like they're kind of just running in place and not stuck in the mud almost. So it's really interesting. And then the one other thing I would say that I always get, again, mentioned a little bit earlier, is this growth of these doctor-owned, doctor-led, whatever you want to call them, emerging dental groups, private group practice. But that gets me very excited, because the days of a solo practitioner working in one location with one dentist are pretty much over. And so what we're seeing is this shift to group practice, meaning, could be one location, but multiple doctors working together, right?
Yes.
Leveraging each other's, whether they're specialists or whether they're getting mentorship from each other, or so the practices are really changing, and the growth of doctors that are opening up 3, 4, 10 locations in a market and really doing well. And I think they're able to do that now because there's so many more resources. We'd like to think that we're one of them, but there are a lot of them out there. And back to the early days, not that long ago, 10 years ago, there really weren't a lot of resources. And people like, you at CareStack and what you have on your website and the content that you create and this podcast that you're putting out, it's just another resource for these groups that, didn't exist before. There was no blueprint, and now there are several blueprints out there.
Yeah, fascinating. So let's shift gears for just 1 second. I'd like to talk about you two, right? Because you didn't just create this media company; you built it from scratch, right? And here you sit today in one of the. From what I see, this is kind of my opinion, and when I talk to people in DSOs, one of the most trusted resources that I'm seeing people go back and reference for good quality content. But you're also entrepreneurs. What did your journey look like as you were building Group Dentistry Now?
Well, thank you for your kind words. I'll start, and you can kind of finish up that. But it was very, very difficult at the beginning, because, like we alluded to, there was a lot of anger, and it was on the internet. People were coming. He doesn't remember. I remember, because I had small kids at the time, and I thought, this sounds dangerous, like the hatred that was coming. And I thought, is it really worth it to me? I'm scared. I think these people are going to come for us.
Who was it? Was it Dr. Workman or Pep Bauer? Somebody from
Right.
Heartland mentioned the same. Well, I mean, I guess they had a bigger target on their back.
So they were getting death threats. So Rick Workman spoke.
Yeah, he mentioned that.
We didn't get actual death threats, but what people were saying, the tolerance wasn't there.
Right.
And what the people were saying, they weren't threatening to kill us, but it was like maybe a couple rungs down from that. It was just scary. And I thought, wow. And I remember talking to Bill about it, and I thought, I'm not sure we should pursue this. And he said, let's just keep going. So we pushed through it, and that was the right decision. And another part of the entrepreneurial part of this is that every time someone told us we couldn't do it, which was they told us we couldn't do the website, they told us about the web podcast, we couldn't do our podcast, couldn't meaning it's not going to work. It wasn't going to work the way we were going, that we wanted it to work. And I won't go into all the details, but people all along told us pretty much every idea that we had, they said no, but we did it anyway, and kind of just, keeping our fingers crossed, but giving it 100% effort at the same time. And, Bill's like a visionary. I'm a task person. So he would be coming up with the idea and I would be kind of moving forward with it right away. And
we're saying it was not a good idea.
Or saying
which sometimes it wasn't.
Or saying that's terrible, right? So it was like, but if I thought it was a good idea, I think that was key, is I would immediately, we're so small, it's just the two of us, I would immediately run with it. And so we were constantly able to act on our ideas if they were, but Bill's, and I think if you're an idea person, which obviously a lot of entrepreneurs are, you need a person who's going to execute.
Oh, absolutely. You got to have that person who can balance you out. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the key to our success, is that I am just, tell me what you think and I will figure out the rest if I like it.
Right.
And so that works well together, because I'm not necessarily the idea person. I'm not the visionary, but I can certainly make it happen.
Yeah. And we had a couple of smaller ventures before we started Group Dentistry Now. We had in 2008, we started a networking website called dentalsalespro.com. And this is, if you go back to 2008 again, which I don't think is that long ago, I guess it's almost 20 years now. That was when Facebook had just really started, right? It was kind of for college kids still, but it was a website that put dental distribution companies together with the manufacturers that they worked with. So very, very niche. And a medical publisher ended up acquiring it from us. We never generated any revenue from it. It was more, we had an audience. It matched with what they were trying to do in the dental space. And that's how I got really cut my teeth in on the publishing side of things, and saw some things that they were doing that made sense and a lot of things that didn't. So we learned from that. And then we had a product that we ended up licensing to CareStack, a actual infection control sleeve for the iPad when it was being used in medical surgeries. And when the iPad first came out, it was something that we came up with, a product called the Eye Barrier. So that was kind of fun. So we played around with some really kind of some small ideas. And I think that gave us a lot of confidence to do, what we did. But everything we started out with was relatively, we were very cautious, very conservative about it. And we were, right. You can start websites and you can do things like that relatively inexpensively. It's, I think, the time that it takes to build up, like you mentioned, building up the audience. And it's tougher now. We had first mover advantage. I mean, we did it before anybody else did. The challenge was there was no content and there was a lot of animosity. Now there's so much content out there that, our job is to just continue to be that trusted resource.
I mean, this is clearly not the first time, right? You're on round 3 here or so of starting a company up. To get you through those tough times and pull out through the struggle, right? Because that's usually where the good stuff comes, is after you go through some pain. Usually you surface a little bit better. Is there anything that you've relied upon during that journey, like a coach or, well, this might have been pre-podcast back then, but is there anything that always got you through that moment or philosophy you followed?
You only quit a couple times.
I quit how many times?
2.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. No. It's
not for long. I think probably a week.
Yes, it's a funny story. So, whatever, we have differences sometimes. And so she quit, which was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And so she's really, Kim's very popular on, story I'm going to tell, really popular on LinkedIn. And at the end of the year, Dan, I don't know, I'm sure you've seen it, where you kind of get your results. Like, I had this many impressions from this many posts. And so Kim was at like 960,000 impressions, or no, maybe I don't know what it was, 960,000 views of her articles,
Yep,
or impressions. And so I said if she had not quit those 2 weeks, she would have been well over 1 million. So she missed it because she had, taken those 2 weeks off so she was not on social media for that time, but she's maxed out. She's at 36 or 37,000 LinkedIn followers, and you max out at 34 or 35, somewhere around there.
It's irrelevant, but yeah, no, I'd say during the hard times, except for those times that I thought I'm not doing this anymore. This is, I looked for Bill. Bill was like the person for me who kept me going, especially in the beginning when I thought this is these people are evil and hateful. And I don't know how angry they are, but they're certainly angry. And I don't know, Bill's always reading something or listening to a podcast, and he's got courage maybe that I don't have. And I think I have probably traits that he doesn't have. So I think
works well.
Finding like that person that has the things that you lack, that together it can become like a dynamic force. And we've weathered the storms, thank God. I mean, if we had to look back, like if we think about it in like 2011 or something like that, imagine like thinking what would have happened. Like we wouldn't probably have believed it. Not only what group dentistry has now turned into, but the industry itself.
Yeah.
Like if you had said to me in 2014, at some point, this industry is going to be flooded with people trying to get in, and vendors and DSOs and just people trying to get into the market, I would have been shocked, because it's such a short period of time. It's a decade. And in that short decade, we've gone from 0 to 100, and it's a totally different space now. And really, hopefully the patient is the one who's benefiting from it, because DSOs, I always say, they can reach customers or patients in areas that a solo practitioner may not want to go, whether it be the inner city or in rural America. People there also deserve dental care, and DSOs are willing to make that, set practices up there, buy practices there, and keep people healthy.
No, it's great. I think you bring up some really good points. You see that with most great companies is you have a visionary, and then you have your operational individual that's going to go and deploy all that. And it seems like you two have definitely taken that and applied that in our space here with Group Dentistry Now, and built that product that so many of these individuals are running groups and DSOs rely upon for good content. Probably in the early days, the only one producing, and now wading through all the content, right? So I'm curious, as you reflect back over this 12-year journey, I'm just curious, like, what are you most proud of in what you've done at Group Dentistry Now or in the space?
I just spoke at an event over the last weekend in Southern California, and had a couple, husband-wife team that they have one location, but their practice has 30 operatories. So this is a big location. Like
that's a big operation.
It's massive. And they're just a great couple. And Kim and I see them at several events, and they always come over and talk to me, and just saying, hey, we just watched this podcast, or we just saw that webinar, or we signed up for this cyber security one that's coming up, and just very, very thankful for the content. So I think things like that, where you're actually somewhere and you're getting that feedback from groups that are saying, hey, we saw this podcast, and we're working with CareStack now, or we did something, we saw something that you did, and it really helped us out. It's great, because when you're doing, especially when you're working and you're an online business, and a lot of it is through Zoom and email, and but to talk to people and get that feedback in person really means a lot. And same thing with vendors, when vendors can tell us that hey, we did this, and here are the results, and we really appreciate that. Here's some of the groups we're working with now. That to me is probably the thing that I look at and go, okay, this is what we're supposed to be doing, and we're doing it right.
That's fantastic. So you've all talked about the Kim, you were mentioning it, like we look at this 10-year span of time. the change and how it's all evolved so quickly, and it's still growing even faster now, right? What do you see for group dentistry now? Where does it go in the future? Anything on the horizon we should be watching out for?
I mean, I think we're going to continue to do what we're doing now. We're working on a couple of things. We want to create a special access only insider group. So something that really can provide a lot of benefit to both vendors and DSOs. So it's something that be a little bit more personalized, where we're getting vendors and DSOs together. So that it's a combination of online and in person, and probably be doing some shorter form podcasts just to kind of keep people up to date, like on a weekly basis with what's going on. It seems like everybody, is challenged to read anymore. So a lot of people like to consume content like this. And, we want to give them content the way they want to receive it. So I think we do a lot of podcasts anyway. And I think that kind of combination of longer form, which we do now, and some shorter form podcasts that are more kind of
updates. Yeah,
breaking news, although we won't want to say it's breaking news. Everybody says that, but you know what I mean? Something like that. We're kind of keeping them up to date on current events. So those are the two things, something that's, super personalized with small group of vendors, small group of DSOs, and then the weekly DSO declassified.
Yeah, I'm curious, because I've thought about that as well too. A lot of the podcasts I'll listen to will push out micro content to me that I share with my team internally here at CareStack and VoiceStack, and some of them can be as short as 2 minutes, right? But super. I don't want to say it's breaking news, Bill, because I think the term that my person that I'll consume their content on a regular basis is just something that's applicable to that may have just happened, that we see a shift in your particular industry, right? Mine is running sales teams. And it's like, okay, great. This is some shifts we may see in the market. Here's how we're going to have to approach this and change. How long do you think those micro sessions will be? What are you targeting for time-wise?
Well, it's not going to be 2 minutes.
Yeah,
that's really hard to do. Right?
With Kim, she could do 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I probably can't. I would say probably 10 to 15 minutes. We'll see. I mean, we're going from one extreme, which our podcasts run 30 to an hour long. So ours are pretty long. So I think if we can get it down to 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll see. I'm speculating. I don't know if we could get to 2 minutes, and maybe if there is some legit,
that could be our goal.
Legit breaking news.
Let's make that our goal. I like that.
That was an extreme example. His are usually probably about anywhere from 2 to 10, right? They're falling in that segment. Then he has longer ones.
Weekly or daily?
It could be weekly, and then a random one will push out, like when the markets went down, right? He pushed out a lot of content out that week back in April. Just knowing that there'd be some shifts with consumers on how people make decisions, and we'll have to sharpen the saw on our side of the business to resonate with those individuals and also to ride it out. There won't be any more just showing up. You're gonna have to show up and really do your best every single time. So it's also just a weekly, and then if it's something that is really impactful. Well, Bill, Kim, thank you so much for your time. This has really been insightful. It's been great learning about Group Dentistry Now and how you all built it from 12 years ago, and then going through a very real struggle there of almost physical harm is shocking, and how you all grew from that and continued on. And how you didn't just watch this wave of DSOs or groups, actually played a role in where we sit today with them. And definitely much more, sounds like a friendlier environment now. So thank you to both of you for weathering that for everybody and being the voice of the platform now. So for everybody listening, check out Group Dentistry Now, right? What's the best place to go? I mean, Kim's maxed out on her LinkedIn connections, so.
Oh, no. You can still follow me. You can still follow me on LinkedIn.
Okay, follow Kim.
Or you can follow Bill. And
I'm not maxed out.
We have a podcast called the Group Dentistry Now Show, and our website is groupdentistrynow.com. We have a weekly DSO e-newsletter to keep you, up to date on everything, and you can subscribe right on our website.
Okay.
Yep, pretty easy. I'd say go to groupdentistrynow.com and then find us on LinkedIn, and you can find everything else there.
So anybody leading or joining or partnering with the DSO group practice should go there, stay connected, stay on top of what's happening, get some good content, wade through some of the content. I know we've done some stuff with Group Dentistry Now to go through some of the noise in the AI space, which is really busy. But I thank you for everybody tuning in. And again, thanks, Bill, Kim, for your time today.
Thanks, Dan, for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Like the doers, follow us, continue on. We got some good content coming out. And as always, keep building and keep doing the work.